Afternoon. Today we have with us Jeff McCracken. He has been a financial advisor for over 27 years. During that time, he has worked with businesses, families, professionals, and nonprofits to help provide them with the insight to the value of identifying goals, quantifying those goals, and then implementing strategies and products to help reach those goals. He is a chartered special needs consultant and helps families with disabled dependents assess the necessary planning and strategy and product implementation to ensure sustained financial support of the life of the dependent. So thank you for being with us here today, Jeff. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. I am honored to be here again and have looked forward to today and hope that, that I can bring some informative value to you guys, your organization, and certainly to your families and those that have dependents with unique and special needs. Ophelia, you can hear me, right?
Yes, I sure can. Yes, yes.
Good. Okay. Well, you've got your screen background set. So when you gave us the thumbs up, I don't think we saw it. So we're glad you're plugged in and we're all good to go here.
Thank you.
And I'm going to share my screen here in just a second. And so when I do, Ashley, if you would give me a thumbs up so I'll know that you guys can see it. As Ashley shared, I have been in the financial services industry for about 27 years. And I've endured a lot of change in my practice. I'm a former high school science teacher and head coach. And my early efforts at the financial advising, I went back to the marketplace where I spent 10 years teaching. And of course, what was funny, right? When I went back as a former teacher back into the classroom, or not the classroom, but back into the school to meet with the teachers and coaches and administrators that I had worked with for so long. When I went back as a financial advisor, they knew I didn't know anything. So you want to add a little pressure to your need to learn quickly, then go back to the people that knew you in your previous life in a different role, and you will quickly discover what you do know and what you don't know. Well, and I say that just to confirm that over the course of the last almost 3 decades, I have worked with tons of people, individuals, families, businesses, charities to help address the unique special needs or the unique needs that these individuals had. Over the last 10 years, however, I have begun to specialize because I was able to take some time and begin to specialize in the special needs community. When I made that executive decision for my practice, I was under the impression that I would just join a host of other advisors in a marketplace that had a very obvious need, only to discover upon meeting after meeting that I was indeed one of the very few people that had a interest in the special needs market as a financial advisor. And I oftentimes, Ashley, you might be surprised to know that oftentimes I would get comments like, "We've needed somebody like you for so long." And that was surprising to me. So it is rewarding in a different way. But I believe that I have the capacity emotionally and intellectually to help a community that, quite frankly, is oftentimes searching pretty diligently for answers. Today's topic is entitled Creating a Special Needs and Legal and Life Care Plan. What we'll talk about today, you have been doing as a special needs caregiver, right? And regardless of the special needs, if it's a disability, if it's a cognitive issue, physical disability, as a special needs caregiver, you are challenged and charged with making sure that the effort that or that the means to take care of your loved one are in place. And I say that way because generally what I run into is that most of the caregivers, and Ophelia, I'm guessing you would agree that sometimes it's hard to look past the actual, what do I need to do today? Literally,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
What do I need to do today to maybe get ready for tomorrow? And I don't mean
Exactly.
like the tomorrows, I mean literally Wednesday. And so, and that's a very real fight, right? Because
Yep. Yes,
every
it is.
single day, right? Every single day, you're having to make decisions to adjust and take care of your dependent.
Yep.
Well, what I ask you to do for the next few minutes is to kind of shift your eyes from today and even tomorrow and begin looking at years down the road, which might be forced upon our hand if something were to happen to us today. As a high school teacher, I always loved the Meet the Teachers night because parents would come in and they were all excited. It's the beginning of the year and everybody was excited. And I would always lay this on my parents. I'd say, get your kids to think past Friday. And it always caught them up short because they're like, well, what does that mean? And I said, get them to think past Friday. And the reason I would say that is if you can begin to think past Friday, then symbolically you could begin to think into next week, you could think in the next year, and you could begin to think about the future. And if you could think past next Friday, then all of a sudden what you were doing today had value, right? It meant that you could see the value of what we were doing today for the purpose that it would play in the future. And so I encourage you all to begin to think, what do I need to do today in the creation of this life care plan to make sure that the care of my loved one continues when I am not around? Okay, so let me share my screen with you. Sheila, if you can give me participant screen sharing capacity, should have had this up perhaps. Says I can't share my screen.
You are all set.
All right, let's see. Okay. Are we good? Good? All right.
We're good.
Excellent. Okay. There's my smiling face. Let's see here. Creating a special needs legal and life care plan. So as I suggested a minute ago, the title is somewhat misleading because it would suggest that this is something that each of us has not done or is not currently in the process of doing. The reality of it is you have already got a life care plan in place. The problem is that your life care plan really does stop, and I don't know intimately, but I would submit that for the most part, most people's life care plan stops at the end of today and restarts tomorrow and restarts the following day. And maybe we're planning a trip, maybe we're planning therapy, maybe we've got a doctor's appointment. But what I want to do today is to begin to broaden your scope and your perspective on what your life care plan might include so that we get prepared for the event that you don't come home to tomorrow, all right? So that's usually the real big aha, right? That's everything else that we talk about. So as a financial advisor, when I talk to my clients and investment planning is talked about, everybody likes to talk about that. How do I make money, right? Some people want to talk about how do we save money, but we all want to know how to make money. And I say, you know what? That's coming. But what we've got to do is avoid the sexy stuff like making money. And we have to address the issues of what if we don't come home tomorrow? And if you can filter everything we talk through that question, what if I don't come home tomorrow? Then you'll be able to answer the question of who and how is my loved one taken taken care of, okay? If any of you have any questions, let's just, instead of waiting until the end, just fire them off, okay? Because I think we have enough intimacy here to be able to do that, and I'll help us move along quickly. Just a disclosure, was there a question?
I have a question. So how you, if you're saying that you plan on who and all that, is that something that needs to be done like notarized, or can it just be something simply as simple as writing it down on a paper and putting that paper like with those insurance papers, or how does that work?
That's a great question. You know, you specifically, you said that some of what we need to do need to be notarized. Essentially, does it need to become a legal document? The Life Care Plan, this presentation, Ophelia, will include specific discussion about a document known as a letter of intent. So the answer to your question is the second part, that you're right. It's just a document. It's just keeping records. Really what we're trying to do is to put into place all the things that help take care of our dependent today, but also somebody can pick up in the event that you and I are no longer in the picture without missing too much time. So there's really nothing here. And the things that do require some legal or some official documentation, I'll talk about as we go through, okay?
Okay.
So even as I've kind of avoided answering, which I fuss at my wife for doing all the time, I'm telling you that we will come back around and I'll answer it specifically. Oh, back here, yeah. All right, so the importance of integrated planning. A life care plan is creating a life care plan that provides for both your own needs and those of your child's can feel overwhelming, all right? Making it all the more important to assemble a team of trusted advisors. This is probably one of the most heartbreaking things that I hear as a financial advisor. Probably something, Ashley, you guys hear more so than even I, but when I find a family or a caregiver who has a very small circle of support, it's almost heartbreaking. So the notion of integrated planning says, find your financial advisor, find an attorney, find an accountant, a banker, social workers and advocates, and I underline in bold face print that one, and then obviously medical providers, but begin to build a circle of people, which obviously includes family and friends and people you know and trust and love. But when we're beginning to put together a life care plan for a dependent, we've got to have the input from lots of people. Here's my own personal testimony. There was a man that lived next door to us several years ago, and he was older, he was retired, he fiddled around in his yard, and one day I had received a machined piece of equipment that just frankly didn't work. Out of the box, it was broken and it didn't work, and I couldn't figure out, was I messing it up? And I just handed it to him and I said, Harry, I don't know if you have any knowledge in this, but I want you to look at this piece of metal. And what it was a pump regulator for my bike tires. And I know that sounds bizarre, but I'm kind of weird like that. But I purchased this piece of equipment that was supposed to let me know exactly what the PSI was in different types of wheels and tires. And so I handed it to him, and about 3 days later, he came back and he said, Jeff, it's broken. You need to send it back. And I said, how do you know that? And he says, well, I took it apart, I tested it, I went through it. And so my point is that don't ever underestimate the value that somebody can bring to your situation, right? I've listed financial professional like me. We know that there are attorneys that work with special needs families, but grab the insight from people who you might not ever believe would have an insight. And you'll be pleasantly surprised to find out that they have a take on something that you hadn't really probably considered, right? So my brother-in-law is a surgeon, and he didn't know anything about riding bikes, but one day I happened to ask him something, and he brought in a medical perspective on it. And it was just totally cool to hear him give a perspective. So integrated planning and a life care plan, if you pick up anything from this slide, just know that you need a lot of people to make sure that your plan is comprehensive for the benefit of your loved one. Cool? Some of the life care planning timeline issues here require that you address issues prior to age 18 and after age 18. In this presentation, it's probably not best for me to dive into the specifics of some of these individual components, but suffice it to say that there are people in your team that should be able to help provide details. So just for the sake of time, I'm just kind of run through there. But a life care plan is just simply a coordinated program of future care, right? So we know that before the age of 18, that we can begin applying for Medicaid waivers. Timing on these issues is critically important. Social Security survivor benefits, we need to know about that because we know that after the child reaches the age of majority, certainly 18 in most states, it's a different age in some other states. So the benefits for our child or our dependent, right, to include survivorship benefits and even retirement benefits from a parent. Some of the means tested benefits, i.e. Social Security, et cetera. All of these things need to be kind of again looked at prior to the age of 18. So a life care plan is just, it's a continually changing plan throughout the individual's lifetime. It's provided by a team that includes several people that will help you look at, like an educator, early intervention, made prior to age 3, individual education plans. My wife is an educator, and IEPs from the age of 3 on from the education world is a totally valuable asset, especially if your dependent is able to be in school. And then, of course, transition planning, which should start around age 14. I don't know what's magical about that age. Maybe someone here in our audience can share that with me. But I know that beginning at age 14, before the child ages out of the educational support system, that there's got to be some plan in place to answer the question of what happens when we get past the age of 18. And then, of course, after age 18, we have issues like SSI. How do we qualify for that? How do we guardianship? Guardianship is a very tough question. I've talked to an attorney, and she says it's probably the most difficult decision that a family has to make. And it's interesting how they look at guardianship. We think that we have a child who's automatically, and it is presumptive. I don't mean to suggest that there aren't a lot of cases that it's presumptive that after the age of 18, someone needs to be able to speak for that person. But she mentioned to me that at age 18, regardless of our child's capacity to manage their life, that the courts look at them as an adult, period. Mm-hmm. And as an adult, they have the right to make their decision. Well, obviously, there's tons of scenarios where that individual's incapable of making those types of decisions. So, but a court says before I give away that individual's ability to make his or her decisions, we have to determine whether or not that's an appropriate next step. And then, frankly, alternatives to guardianship, and I won't go into them here, but there's all kinds of, where if you become the guardian of an individual, that's kind of an all or nothing deal, but there's lots of steps in between taking over full guardianship that need to be considered. And that's where the team member of an attorney is obviously very, very important. Reviewing legal structures. Ophelia, you mentioned, does it need to be notarized? Well, when I talk about legal structure here, I'm literally talking about special needs trust and wills and things like that. And obviously that would be generated by an attorney. Then discussions about after age 18, Medicaid and Medicare, and then all the other benefits listed there. And even what do we do? Is our dependent capable or eligible for college? Ashley, what would you say the average age is of the individuals that connectability is able to step up and help?
So in care coordination, so we serve regardless of insurance, income status, age. So as long as they meet our diagnostic criteria, we're able to serve. But I'd say primarily age-wise, I'd say average, gosh, I don't know. I mean, anywhere between like 25 and
Yeah,
45, maybe right around that. Very far and few between will we have referrals for children. And if we do, we're usually partnering with another agency that may be better equipped to, or can help us, supplement some other assistance. On Sheila's side, though, for support groups, I think they're seeing, I mean, again, maybe Sheila, same.
Ours goes anywhere from early 20s all the way up to 75.
okay. And the
Okay, I have a question. Sheila and Ashley, what type of services are y'all talking about?
At Connectability, through Connectability, the care coordination program. And then
So Ophelia, mine is the support groups and peer mentoring.
Okay,
And then
and
Mario, he would not fall under the care coordination program.
either? Okay, all right.
No, because it's traumatic injuries.
I see. Okay,
Amputee, spinal cord, stroke.
okay,
and-
okay. Perfect. Thank you.
The reason I asked that, thank you very much, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but the reason I asked that is most of the individuals, most of the groups that I talk to have, dependents under the age of 18. You are a little unique in that a lot of your dependents and the caregivers are talking about taking care of individuals past the age of 18. So I don't mean to be irrelevant, but I did need you to know that as a part of the life care planning, that there's things you do before 18 and things you do after 18.
Right.
And you've got a lot of people here that are post age 18. Thank you for your question, Ophelia.
Not a problem.
I was going to ask Jeff on the 14 to 16, because I had a client that I was working with that was actually what they were calling transitioning. He was already 17. And so somebody made the comment of, we should have started this a long time ago, but with the traumatic injury, you don't expect,
You don't have that choice. Yeah.
right. You don't have that. And so I just remember there being a lot of that being a very important part or milestone in it. Made me think, people that maybe are in that younger to really start prepping parents and families and caregivers to know that there are going to be some changes that you don't want to wait till that transition time.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a great point.
One thing that happened, I have a question, or not a question, but a little insight. One thing that happened with me when they started talking about transition with Mario between 14 and 16, and what I kind of noticed is it's something that you should start doing at that age, just because a lot of things that you got to transition to or apply for or do things have a wait period. So you got to wait that time frame before your child hits 18, and then before you know it, he's 18, and you didn't accomplish what you needed to accomplish to be to that point, as if you would have started, back when, it was suggested at the age of 14. So I see that a lot.
That's excellent insight. In fact, I think that's probably to Ashley's point as well, sooner better than later, right? And
Right.
I think just for the sake of this presentation, trying to give some structure, right? We all know that the value of doing this sooner rather than later is, but in terms of just saying, we've got to make sure that at least by this point that we begin to address some of these issues, right?
Yeah, see, I was told to start working on guardianship for Mario like at 17.
Yeah.
Well, I put it off because of one thing or another. Life got in the way, just things came up. Now he's 23 and I still don't have guardianship, and it's still a problem for me because, I have issues with doctors, with his insurance, it's just a multitude of things that you don't have access because you don't have that guardianship.
Right.
And now life is even more in the way. Now it's been a financial thing for me,
Right.
where I can't afford to do it. Even with the help that's out there, with the different, resources and associations that are out there to help you, you still have to pay those fees.
Sure.
And, paying those fees, it's a tough choice. Do I pay this? Do I pay that? When you're on a one, monthly income, you got to choose your battles. So that's why back when he was 17, 16, yes, I was working. Yes, I was doing fine health-wise, but like I said, I put it in the back burner thinking, oh no, I'll do it. And look, 23, he's 23 now, and I haven't done it, and I'm struggling. So yeah, it's one of those.
Thank you so much. I think what happens is you are real life. This little presentation is so cute and streamlined and clean. And what you've just revealed and reminded us all of is real life gets in the way, right?
Exactly.
Because even as I say, isn't it funny that we get hung up on 14 to 16 or even the discussion of guardianship, that we start at 16, 17 for sure, so that we beat this by age 18. Well, we've got 12 months of life to get through and decisions to make. And oh, by the way, I lost my job. I got sick. I got remarried. We had to move.
COVID hit.
Yeah.
COVID hit.
Yeah. So no, and I think what you've done though is just remind us that, and I wish I had said this before, life care planning is an arduous journey. I have it written down, big as Dallas, on my notes here. It is an arduous journey because you have to make decisions for somebody who will probably, well, not probably, but in some cases will outlive you. And so if that's the case, and they are currently dependent on you, whether they're 6-year-old, 16, 26, or 56, if they're dependent on you, the decisions that you're making every single day will impact the quality of life that they have going forward. So again, without getting bogged down in the details, and thank you, by the way, Ophelia, let's move through here. I think we're going to see some things that will kind of help answer a couple of questions here real quickly. 10 comprehensive planning steps to address a primary issue. This is kind of pie in the sky stuff, but it's important. Create a life care vision. In other words, what are we hoping for our dependent? We've got to discuss guardianship. Identify financial resources. That's one of the roles that I play as the financial advisor in the equation. Preparing life care plan costs. Number 5, guys, that is the number one roadblock to people making steps to improve their dependents' quality of life for the future. And the reason it's the number one roadblock is that no one knows what the future costs will be, right? So when I sit with Mark and Lisa, and we're trying to figure out what we need to do today to meet the needs of their child who's currently 25, what's the financial burden for that child at age 35, 45, 55, even 60 years old, okay? Well, we just don't know that cost. We can guess because it costs us $48,962 today. We're covering a lot of those expenses, et cetera, a lot of out-of-pocket expenses. So preparing life care plan costs, well, good luck. That's a really difficult thing to do. That's why I say again, it's an arduous journey. We'll talk about letter of intent. We'll prepare legal instruments, talk about that a second here. Family meeting to also include your special team members. It's totally, totally important. Special needs planning is a 4-focused area effort towards integrated planning. Number 1, we have to identify family assets and planning. Balancing the needs of all family members. Don't underestimate the importance of that. I run into families oftentimes who say, if mom or dad are gone, brother or sister will take care of their brother or sister. All right. Only brother and sister really don't want that, or they do want that, and mom and dad don't want that burden cast upon them. So it's very, very important that as you begin to address the future quality of life for your dependent, that you consider the benefits of planning for everybody in the family. All right. Number two, employer benefits. We need to get an accounting. If I'm employed, what kind of benefits do I have coming to me and then indirectly to my dependent? Number three, we've talked about government benefits, mean tested benefits like Medicaid, Social Security, income, and then of course entitlement benefits like Social Security, disability insurance, and Medicare. I had a lady tell me one time, she said, Jeff, you know, my husband and I really don't feel, because we have the financial means to help take care of our child, we really don't feel an obligation or an inspiration to access, you know, the entitlement programs like Social Security, SSDI, and even Medicare. And I said, you know that you pay for that? Do you know that you actually have been paying for it every quarter you work? You've been paying taxes to help fund the future benefit that you're eligible. And I said, because, and I don't know if y'all can see me, but I told her, and I said, your problem is this big. Right? You have this kind of problem. And if you would take advantage of the Medicare or the entitlement benefits, then to solve is actually this big, right? Yeah. You're going to let the government shoulder some of the burden of helping to take care of our dependents. So it's very, very important that you consider the government benefits that are part of you. And then, of course, the integrated planning says that we've got to look at legal planning to include wills, directives, special needs trusts, and titling. And I'll talk about that here in just a second. Is there any questions? We good? All right. Have a family meeting. As simple as that sounds, it's important that you have and host a meeting with family and friends. And again, the purpose of this meeting is to talk about what do we want for our dependent. During that meeting, we may discuss what benefits we have in place, to include insurance, to include investments, to include inheritances, to include property. During that meeting, we will share information about the future vision. This is what we want for David. This is what our expectation is. We don't know that his disability. Met with a mother a few years ago, and her young son had a degenerative eye issue. And so she wasn't real of what level of education he would be able to assume he would have. Of course, with loss of eyesight, it's pretty measurable, pretty manageable. And but her concern was, we've got to create a vision right now for our 11-year-old son with regards to his education. We want him to have what he wants. So that's where the family meeting really serves a purpose. I've been a part of a few family meetings. It's an amazing event. And really all it does is just says, hey, we want you all to know that we need your input in helping to create a vision for the person that we all love, okay? Sometimes it's very evident. There's not a lot, right? There's just not a lot of options. But if there are any options, we sure want to make sure that we've made the effort to talk about it. I sat in a meeting one time where a mother who grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, she told her family, and they were here in town, she said, I would never want my son to go to a Yankees baseball game. I mean, we're talking about some serious stuff, and she throws out that it is her desire that her son never goes to a Yankee baseball game. And I thought she was joking. She was dead serious. As a matter of fact, she was so serious that that language actually became a part of a special needs trust, that for these benefits to be distributed, and granted, it was bizarre at the time, but it was real to her. And so those are the kinds of things that, and the fun things that come out in a planning. And so it's not a glass half empty meeting, it's a glass half full meeting that says, this is what we want. How do we go about getting that done for our loved one? Okay.
Jeff, I have a question. I was working with an individual. He had both of his siblings. He's an adult. He's 67, and each sibling had different responsibilities in helping him with his care. He, from what I could tell, was able to make decisions on his own, but they were really trying to help drive and steer some of his decisions. Do you recommend in that sense? And you could tell there was already starting to be a little bit of kind of, well, I'm deciding this, or no, I decide this. Does that person, do you advise them at that point, if you don't have somebody, if they can't get on the same page, or for whatever reason, that individual, he wasn't even able to talk. It was really pretty much them too. To seek legal for him to.
Are you describing a scenario where there were just too many cooks in the kitchen?
Exactly. And I think about somebody like him who just, he physically didn't have the ability. I think he could have been part of the conversation, because cognitively he was able to be. I just don't know where then should he be the one stepping up to make those decisions? Let's say if you all were sitting around the table, or if the siblings are the ones, but nothing is legally written on paper that he can't make those decisions. Who do you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. That's a difficult scenario, because if we're arguing about what's best for our sibling, and that right, this guy was a sibling,
right,
of people.
Right.
At some point, someone's got to have the wherewithal, and I don't know the answer to your question, but I would submit that somebody has to have the wherewithal to say, we've got to have a decision maker here, right? Because we don't want to get caught up in the quagmire of making the decision to not make a decision. So I don't know the answer. I've not run into that specifically. Every meeting I've ever been a part of, there was an authority, and it may have been mother, it may have been dad. I've not been in an equally yoked but if that becomes a problem, then obviously, I don't know. You would almost say, can we ask somebody to come in and kind of intercede for the benefit of the dependent? But then you go, well, who knows more about the dependent's needs than the siblings? And it's the siblings who can't get along. Have I heard what you've asked clearly? And does that,
Yes.
Jeff, is that when you would bring in a guardian ad litem?
Yeah, I mean, if you're saying have the dependent be legally represented.
Correct. Or I mean, I think that's why it is so important that you have the legal documentation, that it prevents all of this, because afterwards, that's what happens. They fight on who knows best for their loved one.
Well, I don't know, I may have misheard you, but you can, a child, you can get an attorney ad litem for a child under the age of 18, and the attorney ad litem, I think it's ADLITUM, right, is specifically purposed to represent the best interest of the child. In this case, Sheila, what's frustrating, at least in what Ashley's scenario is kind of described, is that presumably we're in a family meeting, we're sitting around the living room or sitting around the kitchen table, and we can't come to an agreement on some of the elements. Yes, I suppose in that case you would absolutely have an attorney come in. The problem is that no one would probably agree that the attorney has the best interest, or at least knows the needs of the dependent any better than the sibling. Tough scenario. How's that for a non-answer, Ashley? So, all right, let's move on. Letter of intent. Take some notes on this. This is kind of neat. A letter of intent is a living, breathing document, and it is a great way to share information, all right, to those who would inherit your dependent upon your passing, okay? As it says here, it's not a legal document. However, it is considered by the court. So let me just stop right here and say what a letter of intent is it is a notebook, it's a spiral, it's a legal pad, it's a book that starts out this thick, that ends up this thick, because you begin writing down your dependent's current situation, right? His birthday, his toothpaste, had a lady tell me the other day in her letter of intent that she made it very clear for her husband that their son did not like chocolate. And her point wasn't that she wrote it down, and it wasn't the point. The point wasn't that her son didn't like chocolate. The point is that mom spent an unusual amount of time with their child that her spouse just coincidentally didn't happen to know some of the details. So when we talk about letter of intent, okay, we're writing down those items that the next person up would want to know the benefit of the dependent's care, okay? It needs to be updated regularly, and the question could be asked, why do you have one? And it's to leave explicit and specific instructions that would familiarize anyone with the individual. Hold on one second, I want to show you something. I am starting a business. This is totally off the grid here, but I am building a photography business. Okay? Just something, it's just a passion of mine. I enjoy it. And I am putting together all the bits and pieces. It is totally old school, but I find comfort in this. And I show this to you because this is exactly what the families have who are building a letter of intent. They open it up, and there is their child's or their dependent's critical information, doctor's names, medications, therapies, behavioral modifications, whatever it may be. But the book of life, no disrespect intended, but the book of life is something that somebody needs. Raise your hand if you know all the passwords to your husband's accounts. I don't know Alicia's account numbers. I think she's told me her password to her laptop, but if she dies tomorrow, it's just going to sit there and go to waste. The point is that we don't know the stuff that would make life easier. A letter of intent is literally a way of describing a day in the life of the dependent, such as likes, dislikes, routines, favorite foods, thoughts on religion, dating, aspirations, medical routines, history, doctors, etc. And it is the book of knowledge that someone inherits on the day that you're gone. So now you understand earlier when I said, think past Friday. Think about what it's going to feel like when somebody inherits your dependent and they don't know who their primary care physician is. And oh, by the way, how long will it take for them to find that out? And by the time they find that out, how many appointments have we missed? That's how critical a letter of intent is. So begin today. And by the way, if you'll send me your email address, or I'll provide my email address here at the end. Send me an email and I will send you a blank fillable document that will get you on your way to starting your own letter of intent, okay? This huge, huge opportunity. I had a guy tell me one time, he said, you know, when I work in the special needs market, these families don't have a lot of money. And I know that you can still help them. And he said, how do I help them when I can't put product in place to help solve some of these gaps? They can't afford a will, they can't afford a special needs trust, they have no money to invest, they don't have life insurance. And I said, well, what about a letter of intent? Get them started on a letter of intent, and you have provided value to them, because now you've created a plan for somebody to follow in the event that mom or dad or caregiver is no longer in the picture. Okay, so I'll have a copy for you at the end of this. I'll send you a copy of it too, Ash, and so you can have it for your families. It's a really, really critical part of the life care plan. Questions, thoughts? All right, let's move through here.
Ophelia, you need to unmute. I muted you while you were getting water.
Yeah, Ophelia, I think you muted yourself.
Okay, there. Do we need to leave your email address or for that paperwork?
Yeah, when I get done here, I'll provide my email address, and you can send me an email, and I'll reply with a copy of this document for you.
Perfect. Yes, because I definitely need one of those.
It's $250,000 though. It's not a big deal. Let's move through.
Okay, well, you know what? I'll just put it on Mario's account.
I'll send you 2 of them.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's look through group employee benefits. I want to move through this stuff kind of quickly, but when you're building a life care plan, you need to know what your employer is providing if you're employed. Group life insurance is good. Problem is, it goes away when your employment goes away, so you don't want to depend on that exclusively. So as a financial advisor, we always talk about survivorship needs. What are the needs of your beneficiaries on the day that you die? Special needs or not, that's a question that has to be asked. Short and long-term disability, the number one recommendation that I make as a financial advisor is what happens if you lose your income because of a disability starting tomorrow, right? In other words, if you become disabled and your employer can no longer pay your income because you're not showing up at work, what does that do to the financial stability of your home? And generally speaking, most of us aren't working because we're totally in love with work or we're doing it for our health, right? We work because we need the income. Okay, well, if you need the income, you need to protect against the loss of it. And statistically, a disability and the loss of income is much more likely before you and I turn age 65 than it is that we die. So people will buy life insurance, but they won't protect against the loss of their income, and their income is generally the greatest asset that one has over the course of their working years. So for all of you listening, find out if you have disability income insurance, and if you don't, you need to figure out a solution to that. Then we talk about retirement benefits, we talk about supplemental benefits, and particularly other benefits that are going to be provided in the event that you were no longer part of the equation. We then move to government benefits, entitlement versus public assistance. Entitlement are the benefits that we get because we are entitled to them. We don't like the word entitled. I get it. We talk about people, and I'm still one of the younger generation, but I still talk about there's an entitled generation. There's a generation that just feels like we owe them something. Well, that's debatable. But the reality of it is we are owed our Social Security retirement, especially if we put work in and money into the system. So you need to review your government benefits, because it will be your government benefits that will provide a benefit for your dependent, either at a disability, death, or retirement, okay? And there we are, entitlement benefits, retirement, disability, family benefits, when you start receiving Social Security, some members of your family also receive benefits. I think if you have a qualified disabled dependent under the age of 18, I think while you're still alive, they'll get up to 50% of your retirement benefit. And I think at your death, they get up to 75% of that. That may have changed. I think that's still true. Here's an example of a survivor benefit. How the benefit works: a parent prematurely dies before retirement, parent becomes disabled, and a parent reaches full retirement. Rob has 3 children under the age of 18. He is eligible for $2,400 a month. A life event happens. His children under the age of 18 are eligible for approximately 50% of the eligible benefit as a survivor benefit. And then each child is eligible to receive these benefits until he or she turns age 18, or in this case, $400 a piece. 400 times 3 is 1,200, which is 50% of the original 2,400. And then, of course, all of that changes when the child turns age 18. And again, I'm not here to talk specifically about the benefits. Just know that there are benefits for your child under 3 scenarios under the entitlement benefit definition: Social Security, SSDI, Medicare, etc. All right. Children's disability benefit underneath 3 life events: premature death, parent becomes disabled, parent becomes eligible for retirement. Child is an adult who became disabled before the age of 22 and is eligible to receive monthly income based on his parents' Social Security earnings record. He may receive up to 50% of his parents' benefit. It is a separate benefit and does not decrease the amount paid to his parent. Today's presentation isn't about the specific of entitlement benefits or the minutia about how much you get, as much as it is to let you know that it's out there available to you in some form or fashion. Medicare, I won't talk about that, but again, that is a means-tested benefit for, obviously, that is available. I think we're probably all on the same page there. Eligibility for Medicare includes anyone who has a disability due to SSDI insurance approved disability and have been receiving benefits for at least 24 months. The definition of disability from the government's perspective is pretty lengthy. And so as we hope for benefits to happen, you got to qualify for it. And sometimes it's not as easy as you would hope that it would be. Public assistance, SSI, supplemental security income, and then of course Medicaid. Medicaid is, in all fairness, it's a ultimate need scenario. We have no resources. I remember my mother qualified. We needed her to qualify for Medicaid as she had Alzheimer's. But to qualify for Medicaid, we had to spend down her estate. And that literally meant getting rid of stuff. And that was hard to do. But public assistance is available for those who qualify. And all of that's a part of your life care planning. And of course, there's supplemental nutrition assistance program, all these different waivers, different plans. Public assistance is available. Here's a really important part of a life care plan. And I would submit, Ophelia, if you're still there, take a picture of this screen with your phone. This has got a lot of information on it. Legal structure and considerations for a family that has a dependent incapable of taking care of themselves.
Okay, it's not on my screen.
I'm sorry?
It's not on my screen.
Are you not sharing legal structure? It says legal structure and considerations.
No,
Ophelia, swipe to the left or the right. Your phone is moved.
Oh, there it is. There it is. So I can do a screenshot?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Be sure to get a picture of me too.
Well, that's okay. I'll take the picture of you.
That's okay. All right. Legal
Okay.
structure and considerations regarding guardianship and alternatives. Choose successor caregivers, guardians, and trustees. I was teaching class at Any Baby Can about 10 years ago, and I had a lady raise her hand and she said, well, I've taken care of all of that. My brother will take care of his nephew, my son. And I said, well, that's awesome. I said, by the way, ma'am, does he know this? And she said, well, I think he does. We talked about it at Thanksgiving last year. And I said, you know what? You might want to ask him if he knows this, right? And and my point is that we casually talk about it because we have a hard time putting ourselves into a must-have situation. And the must-have says, what if you don't have a chance to talk about it again? If you don't have a chance to talk about it again, do the people that have the capacity to take care of your dependent, do they know all this? That's where choosing successor caregivers, especially a guardian and even a trustee, that's totally valid and very, very important. You need a will, you need advanced medical directives. Who's going to pull the trigger symbolically? Who's going to help make those decisions, right? Who has the right to make those decisions? And when am I in the loop and when am I out of the loop? Certainly durable powers of attorney, and then ultimately estate planning. Up at the top there, we talk about trust. Let me tell you what a trust is. And the reason I say that is because we throw around the word wills and trust fairly casually. A trust is simply a document that says, when I die, my stuff goes into a trust that is managed by a trustee for the benefit of a beneficiary. If I have children under the age of 18, I might name my brother as a trustee to manage assets that are intended for my children that are 14 and 15, right? Or I might have my brother serve as the trustee of a trust for the management of assets for my dependent adult child, 25, 45, 60, right? And the point is that we name the McCracken Special Needs Trust as the recipient of my bank account. We have the McCracken Special Needs Trust to be the recipient of life insurance, okay? The reason I've got down here Special Needs Trust is we put it into a Special Needs Trust because the Special Needs Trust has language so that as it is dispersed, it doesn't disqualify my child from public assistance, right? And I won't get into that very, very deeply, other than to say, you don't want to leave assets to a special needs dependent, because when you do, if it exceeds $2,000 in value, it disqualifies your child or dependent from the public assistance that you've probably spent a long time trying to get. So all of these legal structures, all of these legal considerations need to be looked at very carefully. My role in that is to make sure that everything you have in the form of assets, savings, checkings, investments, property, IRAs, mutual funds account, I help you title those accounts correctly so that they don't land in the lap of your dependent and inadvertently disqualify them from the benefits that you want them to have. Okay. Able accounts. Able account is another additional form of saving for your dependent. A minute ago, I said that we don't want money going into an account of an individual that is receiving assistance, because if you exceed $2,000 in that account, then all of a sudden the government says basically, and I mean very brief here, wait a minute, David has $4,000 in a savings account in his name, and he's receiving Medicaid. Medicaid, way oversimplifying this, says, wait a minute, if you have money to take care of yourself, we're going to let you spend that before we spend our money on you, okay? So we don't want anything to land in the lap, literally or figuratively, of a dependent that exceeds $2,000. The ABLE account, though, established in 2014, Achieving a Better Life Experience, says that you can fund an ABLE account and to exceed $2,000, and those funds can be used to help supplement your the dependent's needs and wants without disqualifying them from from public assistance. So you have, let me go back here. You have special needs trust, and then you have ABLE accounts. Special needs trust handles money that is trickled out to supplement the needs of the dependent. The ABLE account is eligible to fund qualified disability expenses. So there's a lot of things that can be done that help the life care of your dependent prior to disqualifying them from any public assistance.